He believed Byrne in a way that seemed out of character to anyone who said to watching him manage a meeting. It was controlled anger. Greenberger later regaled for the New York Times. I have never seen him like that before or after. Late in the meeting, running turned to Byrne and said brusquely, "My general counsel says you have no jurisdiction. Our view is that we have exclusive jurisdiction." She replied, "Robin, would you agree to discuss this with our general counsel before you use the concept relays?" Byrne, "Of course." One suspects that Robin thought this exchange would cause the she was a big-time liar after all. A frank and fruitful exchange of views with the general counsel of the USA Treasury was a fine outcome. It played to her strengths, except that for the next 2 weeks she shouldn't get Treasury lawyer on the phone. That's when her stylist side emerged. In Byrne's view, if the general counsel didn't be bothered to explain treasure legal reason, then she saw the reason to delay the publication of the concept release. In May 17, CFTC published it. The other three members of the PWG were incensed. Robin Greenspan and Arthur Levitt, the chairman of the SEC, immediately sent a letter to Congress requesting that it block the CFTC's effort to solicit comments. Rumors were spread that Byrne was just an impossible woman to share and straight. Rumors were spread that Byrne was just an impossible woman to steal and straight to work with the August members of the Committee to Save the World. Over the next few months, Byrne testified more than 50 times in a series of eagerly charged congressional hearings about the concept release. It was an extraordinary spectacle in one hurling after another. In a way, an array of Clinton regulators lined up to publicly denounce the action of another Clinton regulator. Congressional Republicans were only too happy to pile on. In a hearing before the Senate Banking Committee in July, for instance, Grandpants made the specious claim that derivatives were already adequately supervised. I will say that the comptroller and herself for the banks and the SEC for other organizations create a degree of supervision and regulation which, in my judgment, is properly balanced and appropriate. Jim Leach, the committee chairman, then addressed John Hackett, representing Bird's complaint in her testimony that the proposed legislation would delay review of federal law governing derivatives market from the jurisdiction of the CFTC and SEC to a body dominated by banking regulators with no expertise in derivatives and market regulation. Leach continued, "I would like to ask Mayor Atqui, the name of the Treasury Secretary of the United States at this time is Robert Rubin. Does he have a background in financial supervision and financial market participation? If he were here, he will cite he spent 27 years in that, replied Hagwe. Let I will continue to ask Mr. Hagwe, the nephew of the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of the United States in Alan Greenspan. Does he have a background in financial market participation? Hockey, I believe he does. More than a decade later, you can still hear them chuckling at that exchange. The concept realized got nowhere, pursued by Greenspan et al. Congress slipped a provision into an agriculture bill that prevented the CFTC from acting on derivatives for 6 months, which just happened to be the amount of time left in Burns' terms as chairman. 3 months later, long-term capital management blew up. It will be hard to overstate the feeling of terror the LTCM collapse inflicted on Wall Street. The Russian crisis was taking place at virtually the same time. Indeed, it was the precipitation error event that had led to LTCM's problems. The markets were incredibly volatile. The Dow Jones Industrial average drop points one day in the late August. The the fourth lowest drop in history, only to again nearly points one day in earlier September. The fear that the financial crisis having swept throughout Asia and Russia was about to hit the United States was palpable. The main reason it didn't was that the New York Fed ordered the big Wall Street firms into a room, and instead that they hammered out a rigorous plan. In the end, Fortune firms inject equity in effectively taking it over. Only Bear Stearns refused to participate. In other words, it was government action, not market discipline, that prevented disaster. Washington was every bit as terrified as Wall Street, as it should have been. The potentially destructive power of derivatives had been exposed. For that matter, all the tools of modern finance, excuse leverage, probabilistic risk models using counterparty exposed had been shown to be flawed. When Wall Street finally got a look at long-term capital's book, for example, it was astounded by the size of the firm's totally counterparty exposed. Up until that moment, LTCM's lenders had only known about their own small piece of it during a hearing on October 1, 1998. Even the Republicans on the Senate Banking Committee fretted about whether the LTCM disaster signaled the beginning of another style crisis. If ever there was a moment when Bob Robin could have used his immense stature to do something about the derivatives problem, he had supposedly spent years worrying about this what it even headlined the regulators might have followed his lead, but he didn't nothing of the sort during the October hearing. Chairman Lane said to Byrne, "We owe you an apology. One last time, Byrne pleaded with Congress to grapple with the unknown risks that the over-the-counter derivatives make market might pose to USA economic. Even after LTC, she remained the only administration official willing to talk about the need for government oversight over the derivatives business. 6 months later, the President's Working Group used a report on LTCM, which focused much more on the firm's exercise leverage than its derivatives book, and which made exactly one regulatory recommendation: unregistered derivatives leaders should be required to report their financial risk profiles on some kit of regular basis. In a footnote, Greenspan dissent even from that recommendation. A few weeks after Brown left the government, so did Rabin. Rabin never spoke to Brown again after that April 1000, 1998 meeting. Immediately after the long-term capital management fiasco, she had ratcheted out the Gary Hensler, then a high-ranking official at Treasury, later ironically the chairman of the CFTC, asking him to convey a message to Robin. We all seem to be on the same side now. She told Hensler, hoping he would convey to Robin that she wanted to work with him on the derivatives issue. Robin never responded. Not long afterward, she attended a meeting at the Treasury Department in which she tried to congratulate Robin for his ruling containing the crisis. He brushed past her without saying a word. Years later, Robin's defenders will claim that it was Byrne's hard-nosed approbation that had turned him against her. She was too straight, they say, to legislative not reference enough to the Treasury Secretary. If she had just been more collaborative, said one such defender, Rubin might have been her ally. Arthur Levitt, the SEC chairman, was one of those who had been told by Treasurer that Byrne's supposed stridency made her impossible to work with. Mm, Years later, thought he worked with her on a project and found her completely collegial. He later told the BBC documentary show Frontline that he found Treasury had misled him. For his part, Gremmeher believes that Rubin didn't take her seriously because he didn't view her a bona fide member of the establishment like like himself. Even so, why should brusquely Burns' personality or her background have been the decision factor? Their bites either were a problem or they weren't. Robin either understood the truth they might make someday cause or they didn't. If he says he did understand the problem, then Halloween Halloween was positioned to pivot on whether or not Byrne showed him the proper difference would seem in retrospect pretty serious. The religion of duty. Robert Robin had spent most of his career acting king of Eagles management styles. His treatment of Byrne, his willingness to put his person irritation ahead of the important public policy issues that derivatives posed, suggests that he wasn't but has Hegels has he lot on.